America Me Bade protests. No Kings movement. What if the protests you're seeing across America right now are not just spontaneous anger, but perfectly timed pressure points in a much larger geopolitical game? What if No Kings isn't just a slogan, but a signal? When you examine timing, scale, and coordination, it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like strategy. And once you see the pattern, it becomes very hard to unsee it. Let me walk you through this. Starting March 25th and escalating through March 28th, 2026, the No Kings movement erupted across the United States. We're talking more than 3,000 protests in cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, Houston, Miami, Philadelphia, and even mid-sized towns such as Des Moines, Boise, and Little Rock. Each location had unique local dynamics, but the messaging was strikingly consistent: resistance against centralized authority, frustration over foreign policy, and anger over economic pressure. Demonstrators carried banners, chanted slogans, and organized digitally across social media platforms with precise timing, indicating coordination beyond spontaneous unrest. Here's where it gets interesting. These protests coincided almost perfectly with escalating tension in the Middle East. By late February, U.S. military posture intensified in response to Iran's regional maneuvers and a series of strategic strikes targeting supply lines. Early March reports indicated additional deployments near Saudi bases, enhanced naval positioning in the Gulf, and increased intelligence operations. By March 10th, satellite imagery confirmed troop movements and new logistical hubs being established, all signaling a heightened readiness for escalation. Within weeks, domestic unrest followed. That timing is not accidental. Think about that. Historically, protests spike after economic shocks or political scandals. But this time, multiple pressures collided. Oil prices surged to $90 to $96 per barrel by March 20th, pushing gasoline in the U.S. close to $4 per gallon in major metropolitan areas. Inflation, which had stabilized slightly in late 2025, suddenly began rising again, affecting groceries, housing, and utilities. The average American wasn't just watching a conflict, they were feeling it at the pump, in their wallets, and in their everyday lives. And it gets worse. The stock market showed sustained volatility. For 4 consecutive weeks leading into March 28th, major indices fluctuated sharply, with tech, transportation, and industrial sectors taking the brunt of the losses. Airline stocks fell by an average of 7% in a single week as airport disruptions intensified, cancellations soared, and TSA staffing shortages, over 500 employees leaving or being furloughed, created long lines and delays at security checkpoints. This wasn't just inconvenience. Perception was shifting, and perception drives behavior. Now let's connect the dots. Economic pressure makes citizens more sensitive to political decisions. Military escalation abroad, paired with domestic instability, sets the stage for large-scale protests, scaling from dozens of isolated demonstrations to thousands of coordinated events requires networks, amplification, and timing. So, who benefits? On the surface, protest movements challenge authority, but strategically, they shift momentum toward political opposition, influence media narratives, and alter how global actors perceive U.S. stability. China, Russia, and European allies are watching closely. In geopolitics, perception can be as powerful as action. Consider China. Beijing has been analyzing U.S. domestic unrest patterns for years. Each protest wave from 2020 onward informs long-term strategy, economic planning, and diplomatic calculations. A U.S. appearing internally divided while engaged in external conflict presents opportunities for economic positioning, trade negotiation leverage, and influence expansion in regions such as Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. And Russia doesn't need to intervene directly. A distracted United States is already an advantage. Domestic unrest, combined with economic volatility and simultaneous military commitments, stretches U.S. capacity to project power. This is classic multi-front pressure, exploitable without direct action. Now let's explore the financial dimension. Oil remains the silent engine behind much of this. Rising prices benefit energy companies and nations like Saudi Arabia, whose influence grows with every incremental increase in global supply control. Meanwhile, everyday consumers bear the brunt, fueling frustration, which feeds further protests. It's a feedback loop. Economic strain drives unrest, which shapes perception, which in turn influences policy and market reactions. If the movement continues through April and May 2026, it could influence key policy timelines. Governments under pressure may delay decisions, slow military operations, or explore back-channel diplomatic engagement with Iran. Not out of weakness, but necessity to stabilize domestic sentiment. Consider the political calendar. Budget deadlines, policy approvals, and the approach of midterm election campaigns are all within the next 3 to 6 months. Prolonged unrest could sway voter behavior, alter campaign messaging, and affect candidate positioning. Political actors are watching closely because large-scale protests do more than express dissatisfaction. They reshape political landscapes. The No Kings branding itself is psychologically potent. It taps into the core of American identity, resistance to centralized authority, and the idea of citizen empowerment. Its messaging resonates across partisan lines, uniting diverse demographics. Movements that transcend traditional political divides are far harder to contain. But it also raises a critical question. Is this organic, or is it being amplified? In the modern digital environment, movements can scale rapidly through algorithmic amplification, social media influencers, and coordinated online messaging. A hashtag can become a headline in hours. A single protest can inspire 10 more within a day. When timing aligns with geopolitical tension, the impact multiplies. Leverage is key. Expanding protests create internal pressure that can be exploited externally. During negotiations with Iran or other regional actors, opposing parties may calculate that the United States has limited tolerance for prolonged conflict. That changes bargaining dynamics, potentially leading to tougher demands abroad and quicker compromises domestically. Domestic unrest has become an element of international diplomacy. Markets respond as well. Investors monitor signals of instability and may shift capital from riskier assets to safe havens, impacting economic growth, employment, and long-term stability. This isn't isolated, it's a convergence. Military tension, economic pressure, political uncertainty, and global observation interacting in real time. Each factor alone is manageable, but together they create amplified systemic effects. Projecting forward, over the next 3 to 6 months, several scenarios could unfold. If the Iran conflict escalates further, oil could exceed $100 per barrel, increasing economic pressure domestically. If protests continue expanding into April and May, policy timelines could shift, and political divisions could influence midterm election outcomes. International summits and strategic meetings are approaching. U.S. credibility and negotiating power are at stake. This is exactly why this moment matters. If you want detailed strategic analysis, follow ANC News, because we're not just reporting events, we're decoding the strategy behind them. Is this chaos, or is it calculated? The truth is, it can be both. Events don't need full orchestration to become strategically useful. Once a situation emerges, political, economic, and international actors adapt and leverage it. Modern geopolitics is about positioning, and right now, positioning is everything. The United States is navigating multiple pressure points simultaneously. external conflict, domestic unrest, economic volatility, and global scrutiny. Each factor interacts dynamically. Outcomes will depend not only on Washington's decisions, but also on systemic reactions across politics, finance, and society. Next time you see protests, don't just see crowds, see timing, see pressure, see strategy. What's unfolding now could reshape global power dynamics far beyond the coming weeks. We're still in the early stages. If unrest grows, if tensions escalate, if economic strain continues, consequences will extend globally. Trade routes, alliances, market trends, even regional conflicts could be influenced. That's why ANC News continues tracking developments closely. This is not just domestic turbulence, it's a global signal. The stakes are rising daily. International observers, investors, and policymakers are all analyzing the situation in real time. Every protest, every fluctuation in oil, every political statement contributes to a larger picture. Pause and consider this. What seems like chaos on the streets is in fact a lens into the strategic pressures shaping America and the world. Analysts predict that, if trends continue, policy recalibrations could happen as soon as late April, with economic adjustments following soon after. Midterm election narratives could shift dramatically depending on public perception of government effectiveness. The influence of social media campaigns on protest growth, messaging consistency, and international reporting further amplifies these dynamics. And yet, despite all this, the United States remains capable of strategic maneuvering. But the margin for error is shrinking. This is exactly why every single action, both domestic and foreign, matters exponentially. The convergence of military readiness abroad, economic volatility at home, and widespread social unrest creates conditions where even minor developments can trigger large ripple effects across global markets and alliances. Watching how this unfolds over the next months will provide critical insights into power shifts, not just within the US, but across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Remember, large-scale social movements are not merely spontaneous. They become instruments in a much larger strategic equation, intentionally or not. And as we continue monitoring, ANC News will bring you precise updates connecting events, strategy, and consequences. The United States is under unprecedented simultaneous pressures. Protests, economic shifts, international tension, and political maneuvering intersect. The stakes are high, and the outcome is far from certain. What appears chaotic is a complex system of pressures converging at a critical historical juncture. Every development, from the smallest protest in a mid-sized town to fluctuations in oil prices, feeds into a broader narrative of strategic influence, domestic stability, and global positioning. This is just the beginning. The geopolitical chess match is unfolding in real time, and ANC News will continue tracking every development, every calculation, and every ripple in this high-stakes scenario.